I used to think life followed predictable lines, the kind you could trace with your eyes closed and still stay perfectly centered. For most of my adulthood, that belief held steady until the day Madison Clark walked into our office and quietly unsettled the rhythm I relied on more than I ever admitted. Her arrival wasn't dramatic, not the kind that turned heads on instinct, but something in her presence pulled attention toward her like gravity. I remember the first meeting we shared. She spoke with calm precision, giving ideas shape as if they had existed long before she voiced them. I, Ethan Miller, 36 and steady by nature, found myself listening too closely not because her ideas were flawless, but because she made them feel that way. It was a strange pull, subtle yet immediate, the kind of awareness that flickers inside you before your mind realizes it's been lit. Back home, my world was anchored by Claire, my wife. Kind-hearted, warm, intentional in the way she moved through our shared life. She had a steadiness that once felt like home still did, in many ways. We built a life on predictability, morning coffee routines, quiet dinners, soft conversations about work and weekend plans. It wasn't exciting, but it was safe. Safe had always been enough for me. At least, that's what I believed. The first conflict sparked not between people, but within me. A quiet tension I couldn't name at first. Working closely with Madison meant we shared long hours, complicated discussions, and moments that pressed us into the kind of proximity that reveals more than you intend. She noticed things, small, personal habits I didn't even know others saw. The way I tapped my pen when I was hesitant. The slight pause I took before responding to difficult questions. The way my focus drifted when something weighed on my mind. Claire rarely pointed out such details. Not because she didn't care, but because she trusted me without needing to analyze me. Madison, however, observed with deliberate attention, as if understanding me was part of her job. That difference, subtle yet significant, started to shift something inside me. The real turning point came on a late Thursday evening. The office had emptied out, leaving only the flicker of overhead lights and the soft hum of computers still running. Madison leaned over the conference table, reviewing data on my screen. Our shoulders brushed an accidental touch, light as breath, but the reaction inside me wasn't accidental at all. I pulled back. She didn't. Her eyes lifted to mine, steady and unreadable. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It wasn't tension. It wasn't romance. It was recognition, quiet, mutual, undeniable. And it terrified me. Because in that brief silence, I felt something shift that I couldn't take back. Something I didn't want to admit, yet couldn't ignore. The lines I once believed were unbreakable were no longer as straight as I thought. And deep down, I sensed this was only the beginning. The shift between what I felt and what I allowed myself to acknowledge grew slowly, so slow that I could almost pretend nothing was happening. But pretending has limits, and mine began to fray the morning Madison asked if I wanted to grab coffee before our project briefing. It wasn't a dramatic invitation. She said it casually, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You look like you haven't slept," she added lightly, though her tone carried a quiet concern that felt too precise, too intentional. Claire had asked the night before if something was bothering me. I'd brushed her off with a tired smile. "Just work stuff," I said, hoping the softness in her eyes wouldn't turn into suspicion. She didn't press, but her lingering glance told me she sensed more than I admitted. And that was the danger. Claire understood my silences, while Madison understood the reasons behind them. When Madison and I walked to the cafe across from the office, the morning air was cool, washed clean by a recent drizzle. She spoke about the project deadlines, upcoming presentations, small frustrations with the team's pace, topics safely detached from emotion. But her voice had an ease in it, a familiarity that didn't match the short time we'd known each other. "You're quieter today," she said, glancing at me over her cup. "Just tired," I replied. She paused. "No. It's something else." Her certainty unsettled me. I wasn't used to being read so quickly. Back at the office, Claire texted me a picture of our dog tangled in one of her blankets, a small attempt to lighten my mood. "He misses you." "I do too," she wrote. The guilt hit me like a weight dropped on a fragile table. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another, erased that too. In the end, I sent only a simple heart emoji, safe, surface-level affection that didn't touch the turmoil underneath. When I stepped into the conference room, Madison was already inside, reviewing the slides. She looked up, her expression neutral but questioning, as if she could sense the emotional gap widening between my intentions and my actions. During the meeting, I noticed myself watching her reactions instead of focusing on the numbers. The way she leaned forward when an idea intrigued her. The slight furrow in her brow when someone rushed through a point. The faint smile she wore when she knew she was right. Meanwhile, Claire's text lingered on my phone like a quiet reminder of the life I was risking. The central conflict was no longer abstract. It was sitting beside me, speaking clearly, watching me too closely. As the meeting wrapped up, Madison touched my forearm briefly, grounding me in the present. "You okay?" she asked again, her voice low, unobtrusive. I nodded, but we both knew it wasn't true. Because the truth was simple and terrifying. I was standing at the edge of something I knew I shouldn't approach. Yet every part of me kept leaning forward. And the more I resisted, the more it pulled. The night deepened around them as Arian led Eleanor through the narrow passage behind the ruined chapel. Moist stone brushed their shoulders, and the cold air carried the faint metallic scent of something ancient. Eleanor's pulse beat faster with each step, not only from fear but from the unspoken truth she sensed Arian was hiding. When the corridor widened into a chamber, Arian finally stopped. A single lantern illuminated his face, revealing exhaustion etched into every line. "There's something you must understand," he said, voice low but steady. "The attack wasn't random. They were searching for you." Eleanor stiffened. Her thoughts tumbled. Why her, a girl who had lived quietly on the outskirts of the capital? She crossed her arms tightly, anchoring herself. "You need to stop speaking in riddles." "What did I do to be hunted?" Arian exhaled, pacing once before facing her directly. "You carry something no one else alive possesses. A memory that does not belong to you." His words hung heavy, and Eleanor felt the ground shift beneath her certainty. "Those men belonged to the Order of Veiled Thorns. They believe you know the location of the Seraph Vault." "I've never heard of it," she whispered, but even as she denied it, fragmented images flashed behind her eyes, blinding light, soaring pillars, a symbol carved in gold. She stumbled back, gripping her head as the haunting visions pulsed like a heartbeat. Arian moved quickly to steady her. "These memories, they're surfacing earlier than I feared." His concern was genuine, and it frightened her even more. "Whoever placed them inside you must have known the Order would soon rise again." Eleanor forced a shaky breath. "So I'm a target because of memories I don't understand? Memories I didn't choose?" "Because of what those memories can unlock," Arian corrected gently. "If the Order reaches the vault, the entire kingdom falls under their dominion." Silence trembled between them. Eleanor had always believed her life was insignificant, defined by routine and solitude. Now she stood at the center of a conflict older and darker than she imagined. She lifted her gaze, meeting Arian's with new resolve forming beneath the fear. "What do we do now?" Arian's expression softened with a hint of admiration. "We run," he said simply. "But we run with purpose. There's someone who can help us decipher your memories, someone the Order fears almost as much as the vault itself." The lantern flickered, casting long shadows that reached toward them like grasping hands. Eleanor squared her shoulders as the chamber door creaked open behind them, letting in a gust of cold night air. "Then take me to them," she said. And with that single choice, she stepped fully into the storm she had never asked for but could no longer escape. The safe house smelled of damp wood and old parchment, the kind of scent that lingered in forgotten libraries. Eleanor stood near the window, watching the moonlight stretch across the courtyard in silver streaks. Arian knelt over a pile of maps and ancient texts, tracing lines with a finger worn smooth from years of study. Every movement he made carried the weight of urgency, yet his eyes kept darting to Eleanor, silently measuring her readiness. "You need to see this," he said, lifting a small, leather-bound journal. The cover was cracked and faded, but the golden symbol etched into its surface gleamed faintly. "These are records of the vault, its location, its history, the dangers it conceals. And your memories, they're the key to understanding them." Eleanor felt a chill crawl up her spine. The fragments she had glimpsed before, the light, the pillars, the carved symbol, flared into clarity. Her pulse raced. She realized with a sinking certainty that the visions weren't dreams or coincidences. They were instructions, embedded in her mind by someone with impossible foresight. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why would anyone choose me?" Arian looked up, his gaze steady. "Because you are the only one who can interpret them. Others have tried, and they failed. The Order will stop at nothing to claim the vault. If they succeed, it won't just be your life at risk, it will be the fate of everyone we care about." Eleanor's chest tightened. Fear mingled with determination. She thought of Arian's steady presence, of the nights they had run from shadows and whispers, and of the impossible responsibility now resting on her shoulders. For the first time, she understood the depth of the storm surrounding her, and the fragile thread that tethered her to hope. Arian's voice softened. "You've already felt it, the pull, the visions. They were not meant to frighten you but to prepare you. And you've done more than survive so far, you've begun to understand." Eleanor swallowed, trying to steady her voice. "I don't know if I'm ready to face them. The Order, they're relentless. And if I fail..." Her words trailed off into the silence of the room, heavy and suffocating. "Then you won't fail alone," Arian said, rising to his full height. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "We will face this together. But the choice is yours: embrace the truth within you, or let fear guide the path. You cannot ignore what you are meant to do." The weight of his words pressed down on her, yet beneath the dread was a spark she hadn't recognized before, a spark of clarity, of purpose. The visions, the danger, the uncertainty, they were no longer distant threats. They were a summons. Eleanor took a deep breath, letting the cold air fill her lungs. Her hand hovered over the journal as if it were a threshold between what she had been and what she must become. "I'll do it," she said quietly, her voice firm. "I'll face it." Arian nodded, a flicker of relief crossing his features. The shadows in the room seemed to retreat slightly, as if acknowledging her resolve. Outside, the wind stirred, carrying with it a sense of inevitability. The Order was moving, the vault's secrets waited, and Eleanor's journey had only just begun. And in that moment, she understood, there was no turning back. The journey back to the city was quiet, the carriage swaying gently as Eleanor stared at the darkened horizon. The world outside felt unchanged, but everything within her had shifted. She carried knowledge she hadn't asked for, power she hadn't sought, and a responsibility heavier than she could have imagined. Arian sat beside her, silent, his presence a steady anchor against the tide of fear and uncertainty. He didn't offer platitudes or false comfort, he simply remained, a constant reminder that she wasn't facing this alone. That steadiness had become more precious than any map, more vital than any strategy or hidden passage. "Do you regret it?" he asked finally, breaking the silence. Eleanor hesitated. Her mind replayed every narrow escape, every night spent running, every memory of shadows and whispers that had forced her to confront truths she'd once thought impossible to bear. "No," she said at last. "I don't regret knowing the truth. Even if it terrifies me, even if it could destroy everything I've known." Arian nodded, understanding more in that single word than she realized. Knowledge, he had taught her, was both weapon and burden. To live without it was to remain blind, to possess it was to accept the weight of choices others feared to make. They reached the city as dawn broke, painting the streets in pale gold and silver. The hustle of daily life continued as if nothing extraordinary had happened, and for a moment, Eleanor felt the strangeness of being both part of the world and apart from it. She had crossed thresholds invisible to everyone else, confronted dangers only whispered about, and emerged irrevocably changed. Later, in the quiet of her room, she opened the journal again. The symbols, the maps, the fragmented histories, they no longer intimidated her. They invited her. Each page was a question, a challenge, a path she must walk carefully but without hesitation. And in that realization, she found a surprising sense of clarity. The journey wasn't just about survival or the vault. It was about understanding who she truly was when everything familiar fell away. Claire's letters continued to arrive, small threads connecting her to a life Eleanor cherished but could no longer take for granted. She read them in silence, feeling both the warmth of home and the pull of the unknown. Responsibility, she understood now, didn't cancel love, it complicated it, demanded courage beyond comfort, and forced her to grow in ways that had been unimaginable before Madison's secrets had entered her life. Eleanor closed the journal, feeling the weight settle not as a burden but as a purpose. The path ahead was uncertain, the dangers real, yet for the first time, she embraced the truth she carried. It was no longer a question of fear or hesitation. It was a question of choice. And she chose to move forward. Because some destinies, once glimpsed, cannot be ignored. And some truths, once known, demand action even when the world continues, unaware, around you. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows that stretched toward the horizon. Eleanor took a deep breath and stepped outside. The adventure was far from over, but she was ready. And in that readiness, she discovered a quiet kind of power, the strength to face the storm, the clarity to see the path, and the courage to walk it, fully awake.